$4 million. That is the amount that the winner of the LK Boutique 250k challenge will be taking home. It is the biggest prize in Australian sporting history. Players come from all over the world to take their shot at landing on this final table.
Welcome to Crown Melbourne. We are down to the final table of the Aussie Millions LK Boutique $250,000 challenge. Now down here at South Bank, the atmosphere is absolutely abuzz with bustling cafes, everybody's walking by, but the real action is happening inside.
And there is the final table, a $4 million first prize for the 2014 Aussie Millions Super High Roller LK Boutique 250k challenge. A lot of money to enter. We had a whopping prize pool of $11.25 million. And out of these 8 players, one of them is going to get a first prize of $4 million. Grant Levy, APPT winner, the Grand Final 2007. You've played with all of these guys. Who should we be looking out for, or is it all of them?
Well, in a 250k, Paul, you pretty much, there's no weak spots. You'll be looking out for every single one of them. It's interesting to see the chip stacks. There's a couple of short stacks already emerging.
We have Max Altergott from Germany opening with ace-6 of diamonds. Folds around to Eric Seidel, no stranger to Australia. There is Daniel Negreanu in the big blind with king-queen offsuit, and he makes the call.
I'm not betting, no matter what comes. I'm going to check and let him hang himself. I mean, let him do what he has to do. Did I say that out loud?
Always has fun at the table, does Daniel. And look at that. He flops top 2 pair. King, queen, 3 flop. Just grabs a stack of chips and put him in, and Max folds really quickly. So Daniel just not mucking around with that one. Ah, yes, Daniel Negreanu, one of the most successful poker players in the world, and it cost him a lot of money in this tournament to enter, let me tell you.
My secret has been the fact that I have a bankroll big enough where I can rebuy a lot. I spent 5 rebuys in the 100K. I rebought in this one, and then in the morning decided to give it another shot, and so I'm in for $750,000 in this one too. Well, a 6th place makes me a small loser, and a 5th is a profit. I'm in for $750. I can make $50,000.
Well, it cost him a fair bit to get here, Grant.
Yeah, that's crazy money. These guys have just got way too much money. Anyone that plays a 250k has obviously got a decent bankroll, to say the least.
Speaking of bankroll, there's Tom Dwan, a.k.a. Durr. Now, he's no stranger to the nosebleeds. He's got pocket 10s.
Yeah, he hasn't had a great couple of years from all reports. Plays the big cash games in Macau, but good to see him back and making another final table in a huge tournament.
Folds around to Mike Mcdonald. He lets it go. Isaac Haxton gets out of the way. Round to Max.
Max is pretty short here now, Paul, so any hand he decides to play, he could see all his chips in the middle if he gets any piece of the board.
He really needs to make something happen. It hasn't gone all that well for him at this final table. But he will make the call, try and make something happen.
And with his short stack here, Paul, if he gets any piece of this board, I'd imagine the chips are going to go in.
Well, he has got King 9 versus pocket 10s. Here is the flop. It is a 9-6-4 flop. That could mean trouble.
Yeah, that's a disaster, Paul. I can't see him getting away from his hand at all. He's got about a pot-sized bet left. And I think we'll see all the chips in the middle very quickly.
And he does just that. He puts it into the middle, and he is quickly called by the pocket 10s of Tom Dwan, and he is at risk. He needs a lot of help to stay in this tournament.
He needs to catch up, otherwise he's going to bubble the bubble.
2 off the money, $250,000 to enter this tournament. I'll tell you what, you'd want some help on the turn and river here. Max just staring on, not much emotion from him. A lot of these players with so much experience, seen it all. The turn is no help. 4 of clubs.
checking out the quickest exit.
One card remains. Can he do it? No, he cannot. The river is no help at all. So we will lose Max Altergott from Germany in 8th place. There is a recap of the hand. He flops top pair versus the pocket tens of Tom Dwan. The turn and river are no help. In his first ever tournament in 2013, Max won $2.2 million, but today was not his day. We wish him well. And we'll be back with more from the LK Boutique 250k Challenge at the Aussie Millions.
Crown Towers is one of the most well-known hotels in Melbourne, boasting 449 luxurious hotel rooms and 32 villas. You can even tell right here in the lobby that it is absolutely extravagant and indulgent, the perfect place to stay. You might even forget that there is a whole city outside waiting to be discovered. Renowned for its designer boutiques, Crown Melbourne is the place for shopping and is home to fashion houses such as Prada, Louis Vuitton, Hugo Boss, Pasquale and Versace. Crown Melbourne offers exclusive villas featuring 24-hour butler service, private elevators and access to the Crystal Club. So we thought we'd take a sneak peek at the most exclusive of them all, the Presidential Villa. This one-of-a-kind villa expands over a full floor of Crown Towers, boasting opulent design, handcrafted furniture and 360-degree views of Melbourne. This place is beyond believable and is the pinnacle of extravagance.
Thank you, Sherry. And there is our leaderboard. Isaac Haxton sits atop with a commanding lead. A whole lot of players at just over $1 million, and Fabian Quas is our short stack, but he still has about 16 big blinds. Grant Levy sits next to me, 2007 APPT Grand Final winner. 16 big blinds is enough stack to make an impression, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's in the danger zone somewhat, but he can certainly wait an orbit or so before he gets too involved. And remember, the next guy out goes home with $0.
That's
Losing
right.
$250,000 a day
Yeah.
doesn't sit well with anyone.
We are on the bubble, and it is a big bubble indeed. There is Tom Dwan. He looks down at 8-9 of hearts, and he looks like he's going to open the pot.
Yeah, it's his type of hand. He loves these hands, the suited connectors. Notorious for playing hands like this, suited connectors, suited one-gappers.
Mike Mcdonald always takes his time and decides not to this time. Round to Isaac Haxton in the big blind.
And Ike's sitting there with a monster chip stack. He's got about a third of the chips in play, which is a huge chip lead with 7 players left. I'm sure he's more than willing to mix it up with these guys. Effective stack sizes are pretty large. Most guys here, 40 bigs plus. Plenty of play left.
It's one thing a lot of players underestimate is the management of that stack, I'm sure. Ike will make the call from the big blind, and he has pocket fours, so we'll see a flop. The flop is a 6-3 deuce flop with 2 hearts. That's an action flop.
Yeah, that's a monster flop for both players. It hits both of them pretty hard. Ike with the gut shot and the pair, and Tom Dwan with the overcards and the flush draw. I don't see either of these players going anywhere, Paul.
105,000.
105,000 from Tom Dwan over to Ike. Now let's see how he chooses to play this hand.
I think he's probably just going to go the check call line. If he raises here, given Tom's stack size, he's probably got a call off. His hand's that strong to call off if Tom shoves. So I think we're just going to see a check call.
And that's exactly what he does. So we will see a turn. The turn, a 9. Wow, that gives Tom top pair and a backdoor flush draw. So the 9 of clubs peels. That gives Tom a commanding lead in this hand.
Yeah, you see the percentages now. Tom's gone to a massive favourite.
Wastes little time here.
Yeah, pair and a flush draw is a huge hand, Paul. And I'm sure Tom's willing to get all those chips in if the need arises.
255,000.
255,000 is the bet. Now, Grant, you're in Ike's position here with this hand. What are the choices?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's very similar to the flop, Paul, in that, I mean, he has to assume that the 9 hasn't helped Tom too much. Little does he know it's helped him a great deal. But the 9 wouldn't really worry him too much. Tom's raised from early position.
Well, he makes the call. The river, an ace of hearts now.
And in Isaac's mind, that's a pretty bad card, Paul. Tom could have been continuing on the turn and the flop with the ace high, even with a flush draw. The ace, pretty much everything's got there. The flush has got there, the overcard, the ace high hand.
Ike checks now. It's over to Dwan. And this is a very... Well, it's the difference between great players and good players, isn't it? The ability to put a player on a read right here and go, how much can I get out of him?
Yeah, well, I mean, Tom's got to try and assess the strength of Isaac's hand. Now, Isaac hasn't shown any real aggression throughout the whole hand, just with the call line. So Tom really has to assess how strong is Ike and how much money can I get out of him. Tom's got $1 million behind. He doesn't want to bet too big because it just shows too much strength. Bet of around 400,000. It's pretty standard, I believe.
Oh, Dwan taking his time, really thinking about it. He's counting out quite a big bet. That looks around about the 600,000 mark.
Bet.
And it is around about the 590,000 chip mark. That is a healthy bet.
Yeah, it's a pretty huge bet. It tells Ike that pretty much Tom has it. So Ike's just got to assess, is he bluffing or is he going for value? And if I'm sitting in Ike's shoes, I'd think Tom's going for value here. He's only left himself about 470,000 behind, which is a pittance, really.
Well, Ike has body language of a man who's quite curious, so perhaps he is thinking it is a bluff because he's been very animated here. He just doesn't look convinced.
Fold.
And he does fold.
This would be a fun one to show a bluff.
Huh?
This would be a fun time to show a bluff.
The flop was 236, right?
Yep.
In this hand, you got Tom Dwan against Isaac Haxton in the big blind with a pair of 4s. Flop comes pretty good for him with deuce 3-6. He's got a gut shot and a pair. He, of course, check calls, and Durr has a flush draw in this spot. The turn card's the 9. Now Durr's in a really good spot. He's got the top pair and a flush draw. He bets, and you can't blame Mike for calling. Now, the river's the ace of hearts, which you'd think is a great card for Durr. He's made his flush, but not really, because now it's going to scare away Ike, where he could have got value if maybe like a 10 or a jack would have come. So for Ike, he's in a tough spot. He has to think to himself, okay, I can't beat much, but this is Durr. He could have something like Queen Jack or 7-8 and missed a straight draw. He ends up folding the hand, and as it turns out, there was a bad card for Durr.
And let's take a look at the leaderboard. Ike Haxton still with a commanding lead of over 4 million. Tom Dwan moves up to 1.9 million. A few players just over $1 million. And Fabian Quas, our short stack, with around 16 big blinds. And we are on the bubble, which means the next player eliminated will not receive a cent. And with a $250,000 entry fee, well, it's quite a bubble. Round to Ike, he gets out of the way. Eric Seidel. And then he folds. Daniel Negreanu gets out of the way of the button. Over to Tom Dwan in the small blind.
And given that Fabian's in the big blind with a pretty short stack, Tom's going to try and put the pressure on, especially around the bubble. It's very important.
Blinds 20-40,000 with a 5k ante. Tom Dwan says, I'm all in. putting the pressure on Fabian Quas.
That's pretty standard with a 500,000.
And look at that. Quas picks up queens, wastes no time, and look at the face of Tom Dwan. I don't think he was very happy with that. He needs a double up. Let's see if his queens hold up. We go to the flop. And there is a queen in the door, a Queen Jack 4 flop.
Not a lot there for Tom. He does have a couple of backdoor draws. Well, the running diamonds would be nice too.
I just like to see a little sweat.
Turn, a king.
Turn always brings more outs. Fabian looking to avoid a 10 now.
I'm rooting for you, Fabi. I just want to see a little sweat.
Will Fabian Quas survive the river? Yes, it will. It is quads for Fabian
See,
Quas.
that's a fun run out. He's live on the turn, and then you make quads.
Just the meaningless fourth queen there, Paul.
Yes, Tom Dwan now counting out the chips, and Fabian Quas with a double up that'll take him above 30 big blinds, and Tom Dwan really feeling a little bit unlucky walking into those queens. And we'll be back. The Aussie Millions 2014 Poker Championship. The 2014 Aussie Millions LK Boutique 250k Challenge final table. We are on the bubble, and here is the leaderboard. Isaac Haxton still with a commanding lead. A whole bunch of players with just over $1 million, and Phil Ivey, considered by so many as the best player in the world, is now our short stack, but still with around 24 big blinds. There you can see Max Altergott, unfortunately the first player eliminated from our final table. And like I said, we're on the bubble. $250,000 to enter, so Grant, it's a big bubble.
Yeah, no one wants to go home next, Paul, that's for sure.
Round to Fabian Quas, he folds. And there is Phil Ivey, picks up ace queen,
80,000.
makes it 80,000. Mike Mcdonald lets it go. And Isaac Haxton.
Well, Ike's sitting there with the button. He's got a huge stack. I'm sure he wants to show a little bit of aggression here, start pushing these guys around on the bubble. As I said, no one wants to go home next. And he might use position to try and get a little bit frisky here.
We raise to 240,000.
He 3-bets Phil Ivey. 240,000. The other players get out of the way. And it's back to Phil. And he moves all in. Ike. And Ike calls. So Phil Ivey, well, he is in a commanding lead. Isaac Haxton with ace-jack, Phil Ivey with ace-queen. But if Ivey gets unlucky, he could be our bubble boy.
Yeah, quite possibly. I'm surprised by the speed of Ike's call, actually. I think he might have levelled himself into it a little bit. You know, he's the old mentality that, you know, Phil knows that I know kind of thing. So Phil's opened, Isaac's 3-bet the button. Obviously, Isaac can be a little bit lighter, so Phil can shove a bit lighter, and Isaac's levelled himself into making the call.
Well, there's no help there for Isaac Haxton to eliminate Phil Ivey. It's nice and safe for Phil, king 4-3. We go to the turn. It is a 9 of spades. Other players watching on. Unfortunately, probably hoping that Phil gets a bad beat here. But if he can feign the river, he survives, and that's exactly what he does, to a diamond. So Phil Ivey, a much-needed double up through Isaac Haxton.
And the chip's going to the most experienced and scariest player on this table.
I play a lot with these guys. They all play great. So, you know, I'm just going to play my best and try to make some things happen. I mean, I try hard in all the events, but especially this one, especially with the level of players that they have, you really have to kind of bear down and put your best game forward.
Well, when you see the scariest player in the world sitting there and taking his opponents seriously, you know it is a real big game. 7 players left. We are on the bubble of the 250k challenge here at Crown Melbourne. Action on Isaac Haxton, who just took a hit from Phil Ivey.
Yeah, he's given up the commanding chip lead that he did have. So he's narrowed the gap a fair bit.
95,000.
Ike being very methodical about his amounts, make it 95,000. Folds around to Dwan.
And Ike's open for a little bit larger than what the standard raise has been. Obviously, with the chip stack he's got and with some short stacks there, he's happy to bloat the pots as much as possible.
Well, Tom Dwan looking interested and then quickly changing his mind. It's funny what the bubble will do. And Phil Ivey will make the call. So, round 2.
This heads up.
Ike Haxton with ace-10, Phil Ivey with a dominated ace-deuce of spades. And there's a deuce in the door, and wow, what a flop for Phil Ivey. 9-4 deuce, 2 spades.
He's not really dominated anymore after that flop. That's just about the best possible flop you can get for the ace-deuce of spades. And Isaac, the right thing would be to continue with his betting here.
Bet is 160,000.
160,000 over to Phil Ivey.
And he will not be going anywhere. It just depends how out of line he wants to get with this hand here. But given it's on the bubble, I think he might proceed with a little bit of caution.
And you're right, Grant. Caution it is. He makes the call. So we will see a turn card. It is the 5 of diamonds. That's an interesting card also.
Yeah, well, Phil adds a gut shot to go with his nut flush draw and overcard. And his pair. He's got a monster hand here.
The pot a little over $500,000. We are on the bubble. We talk about the tension, the way that changes certain plays at this time. Let's see if it has any effect during this hand.
Yeah, well, Isaac's also picked up a gut shot, so I expect him to continue with the betting here. Phil hasn't shown any real aggression yet, so I don't think Isaac can be too scared about the 5 there. In saying that, Phil's call out of the big blinds. He could literally have any 2 cards knowing Phil Ivey.
Well, Ike bets $500,000, so that's quite a big bet.
Yeah, that's a massive bet, Paul. It shows Phil that Ike's not mucking around here. What it also does, given that we're on the bubble, it really puts the pressure on Phil. If he calls here, the pot's 1.5 mil. Phil's got less than that behind. So he's going to be faced with a huge river bet, possibly an all-in. And that's got to be going through Phil's mind here. At the same time, he's got such a monster hand, it's going to be hard to let it go.
Well, the last hand, Phil Ivey doubled up through Ike Haxton. He won't want to see the chips go the other way. But it'd be hard for Phil to fold this hand.
Well, he's got so much equity, Paul. In saying that if the 3 comes and there's a 4 card straight on, it's hard to get value. So he's just hoping to hit a spade here if he continues with the hand.
Phil Ivey doesn't give much away. Hard to tell what he's thinking. Look at this. Oh, Phil Ivey, that is a tight fold.
Yeah, that's really nitty from Phil. And it's excellent pressure from Ike.
And Ike takes round 2, and we'll be back with the LK Boutique 250k challenge at the Aussie Millions. The final table of the LK Boutique 250k challenge is on the bubble. And there is the leaderboard. Ike Haxton sits atop, commanding lead. Phil Ivey up to 2 million. Mike Mcdonald at 1.3. And if you look down the bottom, you've got a bunch of players that are on the short stack. Nobody wants to bust out on the bubble. Eric Seidel folds looking quite relaxed. Round to Daniel Negreanu, one of the most successful players in the world in prize money, and he raises it up, makes it 95,000. He's got pocket 5s. Over to Tom Dwan, who's leans across, takes a bit of a peek. And he makes a call. Now, this is, Grant, we talk about the different kinds of play at bubble time. Dwan has just made a call with pocket 9s. Perhaps at another time he might have raised. Ivey looks interested.
Yeah, I mean, possibly 9s can be 3-bet there, but he's playing it pretty snug on the bubble.
Oh, check this out. Phil Ivey's picked up pocket 10s.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised.
Just called.
Yeah, I'm pretty surprised by the flat call from Phil. It's usually a spot where you'd like to squeeze, especially the fact that he's on the button. It's going to look pretty fishy. And quite possibly have someone play back at him. 10s is such a strong hand. I'm surprised Phil just calls there.
Ike Haxton folds.
We have 3 players.
3 players to the flop. Just some familiar poker names. Ivey, Dwan, Negreanu. Between them, around about 43 million in prize money. 2 of the most winningest players, if you can say it that way, in Daniel and Phil. There's the flop. Queen 6-3. Misses all of them. This will be interesting.
I don't think any of the 3 of them are going to be too thrilled with that flop, to be honest. Queen's certainly in the calling range of Tom and Phil. Hands like King Queen, Ace Queen.
A check from Daniel. Over to Tom now.
Checks.
He checks also.
I expect Phil will just check this back as well.
Check, check, check.
Phil does. We'll see a turn. And it is a 4. The 4 of clubs.
Opens up the straight draw for Daniel. And given the fact that he was a pre-flop aggressor, both players have checked back to flop, it's only natural that he leads here.
He does take a stab. Let's see if Tom Dwan... Well, he doesn't look like he's going to fold.
Yeah, well, the fact that it was checked through on the flop, I think Tom is more than happy to peel one here with 9s. He's got to assume that Daniel's going to bet a queen on the flop there.
Well, he's got his eye on both Daniel and Phil, looking at across the table to both players, and he smooth calls here. So round to Phil Ivey, and this is a tough spot.
Well, it makes it really hard to call for Phil now. The fact that Tom's called, it's really hard for the 10s to be in front of a bet and a call. Even though he does have the best hand, it's probably correct to fold.
Yeah, well, Phil Ivey kind of stuck there. Tom Dwan now eyes only on Daniel Negreanu, and the river's a 2 of hearts.
And Daniel gets there. And as far as Tom's concerned, that card shouldn't change too much.
Oh, Daniel checking. He's going to try and trap him. And look at this, it might work. Dwan reaching for chips.
Yeah, Tom's thinking about turning his hand to a bluff here.
Oh, wow, Tom Dwan checks. Daniel not happy.
I don't bet my friends, you know? I don't bet my friends.
Wow, Dwan's really relieved.
Pay off for sure.
Yeah, I thought you had luck with that one.
I almost left because I was just like, well, you can't, just in case you somehow have me picked.
Yeah.
Oh, Tom Dwan's really relieved. He avoided some big trouble by checking that river. He almost fired, and he would have set up a trap for Daniel. And Daniel could have got some chips out of Dwan. And look at that. Dwan is still reading body language like a man that's quite relieved. On the bubble, Negreanu picks up Ace-King.
And Daniel, having just taken down the hand before, getting involved straight away again. Ace-King's a legitimate hand.
Folds.
Round to Ike. Our chip leader picks up Queen-Jack offsuit.
It's certainly a hand that he can see a flop with, especially on the bubble. Try and put some pressure on if you can flop anything.
He's not going to have position, so he re-raises.
Yeah, it's much better spot to re-raise there pre-flop as opposed to just call and play it out of position against Daniel Negreanu, especially with Daniel's stack size about 30 big blinds. Isaac's made the right play here.
Daniel ponders.
All in.
And he announces all in.
And that's pretty standard. Ace-King, not really a hand you want to see flop with. You want to see all 5 cards.
Well, Daniel Negreanu not messing around there with Ace-King, and Isaac Haxton 3-betting him out of position. Must make him a bit curious.
Anything good?
Huh?
Anything good?
You really have to ask?
Oh, Ike asking the question of Daniel Negreanu about that last hand. Next to Daniel, you saw Eric Seidel there, no stranger to Australia. Let's take a look at From the Vault. Here you can see Eric Seidel a couple of years back, heads up with Sam Trickett for the title of this very tournament, 250k challenge, making Sam Trickett sweat a little bit. And in the final hand, Eric Seidel comes from behind and flops top pair with Jack 9, and it holds up, and he takes out the title. So even though Eric Seidel hasn't had it all his way in this tournament yet, he is still in. We are still on the bubble, and he is capable of doing anything from any position, I assure you. 7 players left, 250k challenge. The next player eliminated will receive $0. There is Phil Ivey in shot. Like I said earlier, regarded as probably the best player in the world. Mike Mcdonald folds. Round to Isaac Haxton, our chip leader. Been very active of late. Makes it 95,000.
Yeah, Ike's been involved in a lot of hands recently. His chip stack's gone down a little bit. It's down to 3.4 million. Still a commanding chip leader, almost double his closest opponent.
Well, Ike has opened with ace-10 offsuit. Over to Dwan. He's been involved a lot at this final table.
Well, that's no surprise. Tom Dwan likes to play a lot of hands. He's gone all in here.
Well, he's got ace-queen. He's got him dominated. Little does Ike know. He asks for a count.
845
Take
more.
845 more.
Looks like it. Yeah.
And Tom shoved for about 23 big blinds. It's a decent sized shove.
Ike looks like he's not happy with that shove.
You'd be contemplating what kind of hands can Tom shove 23 big blinds here with, and which of those, if any, he can beat.
And he folds. So Tom Dwan takes a much-needed pot at a much-needed time.
Ace high.
Probably.
Probably a little down.
I can't get the ice again. I would have played the main event if I showed up on time, but I happened to get here a few days late. It was only the bigger ones going, and those are more interesting to me. I mean, there's more money at stake, kind of more value in them. Even though the players are much better, you just have so much more money that you're able to make more per tournament and stuff and per day. I still would have liked to play the 10K. I like those main events. There's big fields. You get to do some funny stuff. And I kind of need to behave a little better in these tournaments. Everyone plays better. You can't play as many hands. Whereas the 10Ks, you can get a little more out of line. But just going to go over there and try to get all the chips.
There you see some footage of some of our great players off the tournament floor here at the 2014 Aussie Millions. This is the LK Boutique 250k Challenge, and there is the leaderboard. We are on the bubble. Isaac Haxton, 3.4 million. Phil Ivey up to 1.9. Negreanu at 1.7. And if you look down the bottom, you've got Fabian Quass, who still has 22 big blinds, but he is our short stack of the tournament. A little earlier, Max Altergott was our first eliminated player of our final table, and 7 remain. Over to Daniel Negreanu and Eric Seidel in shot. Both players fold. Tom Dwan been involved a lot in the action. Gets out of the way this time. Over to Fabian.
Fabian's the short stack of the tournament. Still has 22 big blinds, so he's got a little bit of room to manoeuvre. He hasn't been too involved of late.
Raised to 90,000.
90k is the raise. Phil Ivey folds. Around to Mike Mcdonald. He's been quiet of late. Fabian raising with ace-10 off suit.
Mike in the small blind here, so he's never going to flat call. It's either 3-bet or fold here. 3-bet can be fraught with danger, given that Fabian's only got about 22 big blinds. He's going to get shoved on relatively often if Fabian's got any type of hand.
Oh, Mike taking the aggressive line here and 3-betting.
220,000.
220,000 asks the question. Over to Ike in the big blind. Oh, he looks a bit interested. Taking a good look at Mike's stack.
1.3 total.
Obviously still on the bubble here too, so Ike is happy to ramp up the aggression like he has been the whole bubble period. I think given the stack sizes, Ike might have a pretty reasonable hand here.
Really taking his time, and now we can see Ike has pocket jacks.
Yeah, it's a very strong hand here.
And he moves all in.
And he's going to get it through pretty quickly. Quick fold from Fabian.
And Mike Mcdonald folds also. So Isaac Haxton, our big stack, applying pressure during the bubble. And of course, you know, the bubble is that time, Grant, when most players feel the nerves.
Yeah, Paul, if you shell out a $250,000, you don't want to go home empty-handed. Doesn't matter who you are.
I love playing the big buy-in tournaments. There's more on the line, more to win. It's a very tough final table. It's a bunch of the biggest names in poker. It's a bunch of guys I've played a lot with before, so I feel like that makes things a little more interesting when you're playing against somebody you have some experience against as opposed to a more anonymous face in a larger field.
Well, Ike Haxton has remained our chip leader for most of this final table. He's up near 4 million with, as you can see, about 77 big blinds, so tons of chips there. But we are on the bubble with a lot of experienced players here, so everybody trying to fight back and stay in this tournament. Some of these players have ponied up more than 250,000 because some of them have bought in more than once. And Isaac Haxton is one of them. He's bought in for 500,000. Daniel Negreanu, he's in for 750,000. So he needs a pretty big payday to break even. He reaches for chips.
And that's insane money that Daniel's spent on this tournament. Needs to finish 5th or better.
Well, Daniel has opened here a little bit loose with Queen 5. Round to Mike Mcdonald. Really taking his time.
Yeah, well, Mike's under the 20 big blind stack size here.
Well, he makes the call. So Daniel propping up in his seat a little bit. Mike Mcdonald, we can see 1 ace there. The flop is 7-8-5. And Mike has ace-9. This could get interesting.
Okay, so the gut shot straight draw for Mike and the overcards against the bottom pair for Daniel and the flush draw.
Betting 150.
Mike checks. Daniel fires. Back over to Mike.
I still haven't even looked at a prop yet.
There's that stare that we've gotten to know from Mike Mcdonald.
And obviously feeling the bubble pressure too here. He does have the gut shot in the overs. But how much money is he going to make if the turn comes a 6?
And look at that. Mike Mcdonald, I would imagine, would normally call there, but being on the bubble, he's just electing to play a little bit safe, and Daniel taking advantage of that. Yes, Daniel looking very confident, isn't he? And we'll be back with the LK Boutique 250k challenge here at the Aussie Millions. There is the leaderboard. Isaac Haxton still our chip leader. Phil Ivey a little over 2 million. Daniel Negreanu now moves up to 2 million. And Eric Seidel, probably the most experienced player at the table, is our short stack. And the next player eliminated, he gets 0. Max Alter got eliminated a little bit earlier. He also got 0. Some of these players have bought in for more than 250,000. Daniel in for 750,000. Mike Mcdonald, he's in for 750,000. And Isaac Haxton's in for 500,000. We see Phil Ivey there opening. And we see Isaac Haxton looking down at ace-10. These two have traded blows quite a bit here.
And Ike continues to card rack on this final table. He keeps getting dealt some pretty strong hands. His stack's been stuck in reverse a little bit over the last few orbits. But he's still a commanding chip leader.
Looks like he's going to get involved as well. So Phil Ivey raises, Isaac Haxton calls with ace-10 offsuit.
It's pretty unconventional pre-flop, just calling out of the small blind there, but Ike just wants to play some pots, given he's got a lot of chips, trying to put some pressure on post-flop.
Well, that is a wet board or an action flop. The flop is Jack 8-9. We're still waiting on the graphic for Phil Ivey's hand, but at the moment, Isaac Haxton has, well, he's got an up and down straight draw.
Yeah, it's a really coordinated flop.
Betting 125.
The kind of flop that players will proceed with a little bit of caution.
Well, without knowing what Phil has, he bets 125,000.
Call.
And that Jack 9-8 with 2 spades certainly hits the calling range out of the blinds.
Well, Ike calls. The turn's a 3 of hearts. Now, Grant, what are you thinking Phil might have here?
Well, he's raised early position, so his hand is weighted more to strong holdings. You know, your ace kings and ace queens, your pairs.
Well, Ivey fires again, a little over 300,000. And look at that. We're about to find out what Phil Ivey had, but he's taken down the pot from Isaac Haxton, and he had Queen 10, so there you go. He's flopped the straight.
Yeah, it's a pretty good flop for Phil's hand, I guess.
So Phil Ivey picks up some chips and takes round 3 from Isaac Haxton. And with that, we'll move up to just a little over 2.1 million in chips. Ike still with the lead. Daniel up to 2.1. And Fabian Quass and Eric Seidel remain our short stacks at this final table. Eric really needing to make something happen. But like I said earlier, he's got tons of experience, so I'm sure he can make a comeback. 7 players. The next player gets nothing. And first prize is $4 million. The action is on Ike Haxton.
Fold.
Let's it go. Round to Eric Seidel, and look at that. I just said he's got to make something happen. He must have heard me, and he moved the chips in.
11 big blinds, certainly in the danger zone. Pretty standard play from Eric here.
Daniel looked at his cards and did not move, just looked across at Eric. He's really thinking about this. But he lets it go. And wow. Fabian Quas has picked up pocket kings.
All in.
And announces all in.
Fold.
The remaining players get out of the way, and we will see whether Eric Seidel has anything here to brag about, because he's walked into a massive hand, and Eric Seidel has pocket jacks, so he has a massive hand too.
Yeah, that's just unlucky for Eric, picking up pocket jacks there. 11 big blinds. Dream scenario. Unfortunately, he's run into Fabian's kings.
Well, pocket jacks a huge underdog here, and if he doesn't get any luck, he will be our bubble boy. The flop, Queen 7-3. No luck for Seidel. 2 cards away, and he will be our bubble boy, unless the turn or river help.
No backdoor draws picked up. Needs a jack.
Turn, a 2. No help. 1 card away. Will it be a jack to save Eric Seidel? Can he pull a rabbit out of the hat? The river is another deuce, so no is the answer. Eric Seidel stands up and shakes hands. A round of applause from the gallery. He is our bubble boy. Unfortunately, he receives no money. And now, the next place finisher takes home some serious coin. There is the footage. Eric Seidel jacks into kings. He waited a long time to pick up a hand, and he walked into a monster. Unfortunately for Eric, it wasn't to be. The 2014 Aussie Millions has been kind to Eric, but not kind enough, unfortunately. He's been our bubble boy. There are the remaining 6 players who will all cash now in this tournament. Ike with the commanding lead yet again. Daniel, 2.1 million. Phil Ivey with a little over 2 million. Fabian Quas at 1.4. Tom Dwan at 1.3. And Mike Mcdonald with around 17 big blinds is our short stack. There's been a lot of action at this final table, with an $11.25 million prize pool to be shared amongst 6 players and a whopping first prize of $4 million. Join us next time at the LK Boutique 250K Challenge here at the Aussie Millions as this final table continues.